want to establish a background for what we are going to see today in our study, and also reiterate some of the important factors that we discovered and saw last week. So while we are going to study part 2 of the beast of end times and the abomination of desolation, I want to first make a pretty bold statement and an admission as well. And the reason I want to make this bold statement and admission is because it is fact. And as we progress further this morning, we will see the evidences of those facts. And I say admission and a statement because we are all part of this who are here this morning. And that statement is the biggest disgrace and even curse to all humanity on planet Earth is not by a group of people who are atheists or Roman Catholics or Muslims or Hindus or the Jews. It is by far the Christian world that has been and is the greatest disgrace to humanity and even a curse. Why do I say that? Let's see some reasons, and as we go further in the presentation, you will see more reasons. You know, the word Christian is used only thrice in the entire Bible or in the New Testament, because that's where the word Christian arises. And the first one is used in the ending verses of the book of Acts, chapter 11, and it's a plural word of Christian, which is Christians. And this term Christians was coined by the people of Antioch when the disciples of Christ were spreading the word, preaching the gospel of Christ to that place for almost a year. And that's when the people of Antioch were blessed and they felt rejoicingly excited about what they were hearing, what they were learning, what they were experiencing. And so they coined this term Christians for Christ's disciples. That's where the term Christians first begins in the Bible. And for you to understand geographically where Antioch is, it is in the province of the modern day Turkey, which for over 2 centuries has been the central hub of the king of the north, or Islam, for over 200 years, which we discussed last couple of sessions anyway. That's where the Christian was first coined. Then later on, we have 2 more references in the same book of Acts, and then finally in the book of Peter, 1 Peter. Do you know, or have you considered, if you didn't know, why are Christians called Christians? And why were they called Christians at that time? Because those people, they didn't speak Christ. They lived Christ. They breathed Christ. And Christians, in a sense, were there even in the Old Testament days. Not with the word Christians, but God used and spoke to his people through his Son. You know, after Adam and Eve fell to sin, then God communicated with humanity only through his Son and through the holy angels. And if it was the descendants of Adam, Noah, Abraham, they were all Christians. They were upright people, following God in every sense of the word, to the knowledge that they had from the writings and from the knowledge that was passed on by the various people from the time of Adam onwards. So to be Christian is to be like Christ. Jesus said in 1 John chapter 1 that you walk and talk like me if you claim to be a Christian. You follow Christ in every way, your lifestyle, how you dress, how you eat, how you talk, what kind of words you use in your conversations. So that is what Christianity meant in the Old Testament days, and that's what it all represented and meant in the time of the disciples and thereafter. But what happened? A compromise occurred 321 AD in the time of Emperor Constantine, which we also addressed a couple of sessions ago. And because the Christians, the pure Christians, most, not all, but most of them compromised, the beast of Revelation 13 was born. The papal hierarchy or the Pope of Rome or the Roman Catholic system. I don't mean the people. There are beautiful people in every nation, religion, tongue, and people. There are beautiful Hindus and Muslims and Catholics and atheists, and many of them are my very good friends. It's not about the people, I'm talking about the system, the hierarchy system. If the Christians had not compromised the pure first Christians that Jesus raised through his disciples, if that compromise didn't happen in AD 321, the papal hierarchy or the papal system or the Roman Catholic Church wouldn't have been born. And if they were not born, then in the early 600s, they would have needed to create a counterfeit religion to counteract Sabbath keepers, which is Islam. We saw that last week. There wouldn't have been problems in society, there wouldn't have been violence, there would have been love and union and harmony among humanity. And that's why I said, and we'll see more technically, how Christians are a biggest disgrace and even curse to humanity. So having said that, there always has been a small group of remnant of God's people who have sustained and lived the truth. And even now, today, in this generation, like all the ages and generation of the past, there is a small remnant who sustain the truth, live Christ, speak Christ in every sense of the word. And we saw that in Revelation 14, verses 1, and also in Revelation 16, when the seventh plague is ushered in by the voice of God our Father. The seventh plague comes and you have the huge earthquake and so on. So this faithful remnant will eventually be identified as the 144,000, and their faces, all the world who have gathered in Jerusalem, armies of all the world, will see the faces of these people shining with the glory of God. Just like the face of Moses shone when he came down from Mount Sinai after having that time with God on the top of the mountain. Now the Bible calls it 144,000, and is it a literal number or symbolic? That's besides the point. But Bible gives the number 144,000. I believe it's literal. We have over or about 22 to 23 billion Christians in the world today. So out of these 22, 23 billion people living today as Christians who profess to be Christians, if only 144,000 are living to see the coming of Christ and they hear the voice of God in the hour of the day of Christ coming, that means there was always, in the time of Noah and thereafter, in the time of Christ, and all these years and ages thereafter, there always have been a small number to maintain the truth and sustain the truth of God and Christianity. Do you see the seriousness of that? And that's why we have what we have. If we had Christians living the way God has designed and shown in His Word, there wouldn't be an atheist or an infidel of any kind in the world today. So having set the platform and the stage for our presentation, let's get to the topic for today, the beast of end times and the abomination of desolation, part 2. We covered the first part last week. Prophetic revelation of the beast's true identity, lineage, which means the lineage of the beast's true identity goes back to almost 4,000 years from now. Roman Catholic Church and the hierarchy was born after the AD 300 era, and they came into global prominence and power only in 538 AD. But their lineage goes back to almost 4,000 years ago, or a little over than 4,000. And we'll see that now. If you remember, I shared with you the last couple of times that Jesus said in Matthew 24, let the reader of Daniel understand, when the abomination of desolation stands in the holy place, flee to the mountain. Leave Judea and flee. Because that's the kind of persecution and devastation that will come globally that the world has never seen. So we'll go to our first verse for today from the book of Daniel, and we'll see and identify the lineage of the true identity of this beast which exists today. Let's have a word of prayer before we open God's word. Father in heaven, we thank you for thy word. Thank you for all that they are present here this morning and perhaps evening for some. We thank you for this privilege that we can go down and trace history, how things happened, and how they are related to us today. And in the very near future, the events that are going to come have already begun its work, baleful work, many, many centuries and couple of millenniums ago. We ask for thy holy presence, we ask for thy guidance and help, and may thy Spirit help each of us to understand and grasp the truths necessary for this time. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So Daniel 7, chapter 7, verses 7 and 8. This is approximately about 550 years before Christ. 550 BC approximately, a couple of years back and forth. And this is a vision he saw, and he says, "And this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast." Remember, we saw the images last time. The first beast was Babylon, which was like a lion. The second beast was like a bear, which was Medo-Persia. Third was like a leopard, which was Greece. And the fourth was a deadly beast. This is what he's describing here. A fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. This is talking about the pagan or heathen Rome, ruled from 168 BC to 476 AD, officially. So this was the most dreadful and terrible beast that Daniel is seeing in the vision. And before it had 10 horns. Remember that? How the pagan Rome was divided into 10 kingdoms. And we saw all the names of the 10 kingdoms earlier in the earlier sections. Then what does it say after that? He says, "I considered the horns, and behold, there came up amongst them another little horn," which means the 11th one, a little horn, "before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots." And you saw, we addressed that last time. "And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things." Speaking what? Great things. So Daniel is talking about this hierarchy system which will have the eyes of a man and speaking great things. We read that in Revelation last time. So just to give you a picture of this beast, that's what the beast looked like. This is just an imagery look for you to just have a grasp of how dreadful this beast was. So there was an 11th horn which came out, another horn from the 10, and which had eyes like a man. And you can see that in the image as the artist has portrayed it there. And 3 were plucked up. These were the 3 we saw them last week and the week before that as well. The Heruli, the Ostrogoths, and the Vandals. And all these 3, they were eliminated completely by whom? By this little horn power, which is the hierarchy of Roman Catholic Church, the papacy. And all these 3 were strong opposers of the Trinity doctrine and were Seventh-day Sabbath keepers, which we also mentioned last week. Now see, as Daniel said in the 7th and 8th verses of chapter 7, the same words after about 600 years is being repeated exactly by John, the revelator who wrote the book of Revelation. And he says in 13:3-8, "And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed." So he was wounded. We saw that. I'm just recapping. He was wounded in 1798, and immediately in 1800, his wound started to be healed. But it's not completely healed. And we saw that how the whole world wandered after the beast, or went after the beast. And in verse 5, you see, "There was given unto him a mouth speaking great things." And all those of the world who wandered after the beast, except those, the small group, whose names are written in the book of the Lamb, except them, the whole world wandered after the beast, and we emphasized that last week, and they worshiped the dragon, not anybody else. They worshiped the dragon, which gave power to the beast. Let's go further. Now, in the next chapter of Daniel, chapter 8, we see some more light on that subject. Verses 9 to 12. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, and that is papacy, which waxed exceeding great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. The pleasant land is Jerusalem. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven. And it cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. We're going to break this down in a bit. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, which is Christ. And by him the daily sacrifice was taken away. The word sacrifice is not there in the original Hebrew text. It is supplied by the translators who translated into English the first in the 1600s by the people who got the 40 great Bible scholars who got from all over the world, and they translated into English the King James Version, which is by far the best version or the most accurate version in the English language from the manuscripts that they had. So it should have actually read, by him the daily was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down, and an host was given him against the daily by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. So what did it do? It cast the truth to the ground. Let's break it. The verse 9 is quite clear. The little horn is papacy, and it was exceeding great, and waxed exceeding great, and went to the south and towards the east, and even to the pleasant land. Now let's go to verse 10. So that's the beast, the little horn that came out of this deadly beast. Now, the 10th verse of that same chapter, let's break it down. And it, which is the hierarchy of the papal Rome, the Roman Catholic Church hierarchy, the little horn is the papal Rome, waxed great even to the host. Host means the saints of God, of heaven, means the saints who are on earth. And it cast down some of the host and of the stars, which are the leaders of God's people on this earth. They cast it to the ground and stamped on them, which means persecuted and killed them. Then verse 11, yea, he, that he is again the little horn, papal Rome, magnified himself to the prince, which is Jesus, prince of the host. That means he took the position of Christ by himself. Remember we saw that he claims to be the vicar of Christ. And by him, which is papal Rome, the daily, you know what the daily is in Hebrew, Tamid, which is continual pagan abominations which began in Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar's time. Continual abominations, heathen abominations, was taken away. Taken away is not like you and I would understand today. In the Hebrew language, taken away means exalted or lifted up. So this system, this beast, and this little horn, the Roman Catholic Church system, not the people, the system, they exercised and continued the pagan abominations in the church and exalted it really up. And the place of the sanctuary was cast down. And verse 12, and it, that means the little horn, which is papal Rome, cast the truth to the ground. What did it cast? It casted the truth to the ground, brought it down. Why? Because they exalted or lifted up all the pagan abominations. And the verse 12 says it practiced and prospered. You will remember that in the days of pagan Rome, which was 168 BC to 476 AD, polytheism, heathenism, and worship of multiple idol gods was significantly prevalent. And that is what the papal Rome exalted, those pagan abominations. The prince of the covenant, which is Jesus, the righteous branch, was broken by the pagan Rome when he was crucified. You find that in Daniel 11:22, and a pagan Roman cross. And the holy city, Jerusalem, which is the pleasant land, and the holy sanctuary were destroyed by the pagan Rome armies in AD 70. We also saw earlier that Revelation 13:2 said that Satan, which means the dragon, gave his seat, power, and great authority to papal Rome. And as a result, the papal church used this power to cast the truth of the heavenly sanctuary to the ground by setting a counterfeit sanctuary and a counterfeit priestly ministry. Just as pagan Rome was against the Holy Covenant, in Daniel 11:28 we see that so papal Rome began to have indignation against the Holy Covenant. And we find that in the 30th verse of Daniel 11. And the prophet Daniel refers to this as the abomination that maketh desolate. That's the verse in Daniel 11:31. And arms, that is the power, shall stand on his part, this is the papal Rome, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, that is Rome, and shall take away the daily, that means exalt the continual paganism, abominable paganism, and they shall place the abomination, the detestable practices that make us desolate. So at this time, 538 AD, and the years preparing to 538 AD, the daily, which is paganism, idolatrous worship, was baptized, meaning they gave it a Christian garb. They put on a Christian garb to their practices, or a Christian front, if you like, or a Christian face. But inside, what is happening? The continual pagan abominations. There was in practice from the very first kingdom, which had the image of lion, the kingdom of Babylon. All those abominations. Remember Babylon, in the time of Nebuchadnezzar, they sieged Jerusalem 3 times and they took them captives. And Daniel and some of his friends were taken captive in the very first time, the first siege. And they came and destroyed. They took away the vessels of the temple of worship, God's temple of worship, the sanctuary, which we'll discuss more next week. They took the vessels. They went in with unholy mind and way and trampled God's sanctuary. So this new Babylon has put a Christian garb or a Christian front, but doing the exact same abominations secretly. And we're going to see how this secrecy began and when and how it is being carried forth today. Remember, we read this last week, and I told you remember the word mystery. Let's read this again. Revelation 17:4-6. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written. And what was the name written in the forehead of this woman in this church, which is the hierarchy of the Roman Catholic Church? Mystery. Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. So what we want to focus today is what was written on her forehead? Mystery. Why? Number 2, Babylon the Great. Why? The mother of harlots. Let's go further. Babel or Babylon simply means, in the original Hebrew language, confusion. And confusion wrought or brought about by mixing. Mixing what? Truth and error. That's what Babel or Babylon means. So Babel or Babylon is the ancient site and or capital of Babylonia, which is modern Hilla, situated on the Euphrates. You know, where is Hilla? This is what Hilla looks like. This is the destroyed Babylon. Hilla is about the center of Iraq. It is in the central area of Iraq, about 100 kilometers south of Baghdad. And this is where this was happening, the Tower of Babel. And we're going to address that with a little more detail in a moment. So, that's the ancient site on the river Euphrates, where Babel was constructed, or the word Babel or Babylon came into existence. And the kingdom of Nebuchadnezzar, which was the head of gold and the image of the lion, that's what kingdom of Babylon was in the time of Nebuchadnezzar. Now let's go to history, where the first mention of this word Babel or Babylon is used. Genesis 10, 6 to 8, because we have to get a proper connection. Because remember I said in the beginning that the lineage of the true identity of the beast goes back to 4,000 years. And the sons of Ham, that means Ham was one of the sons of Noah. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. This is the lineage of Ham. And the sons of Ham was Cush and Mizraim and Phut and Canaan. And the sons of Cush were Seba, Havilah, and Sabta, and Ramah and Sabtecha. And the sons of Ramah, Sheba, and Dedan. And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh in the land or in the plains of Shinar. That's the first use of the word Babel. So Nimrod was the son of Cush and one of the grandsons of Ham, who was the son of Noah. Let's get some details. Time period of this. 1,556 years after Adam, which is 2,444 BC, the flood covered the whole earth. And we have already shared with you a few sessions ago that there are over 600 evidences of this event worldwide. 2444 BC, the flood covered the whole earth, and Noah at this time was 600 years old. And Genesis 9:29 says that Noah lived 350 years after the flood and died at the age of 950. So that would be 2094 BC. Now we're in 2025, so you can calculate. So some years after that, after 2094 BC, was when Nimrod began to build the Tower of Babel, and that was the beginning of his kingdom in the plains of the land of Shinar. And verses 1 to 4 of Genesis 11 says this, and the whole earth was of one language, whole earth, and of one speech, right? No 2 languages or 3, only one language. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain, a plateau, if you like, in the land of Shinar. And they dwelt there, and they said one to another, go, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, go to, let us build a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven. And let us make a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. So this is the first time in human history that they want to make a city, and the walls of the city is supposed to go up to the heavens, it says. Why? Because they knew that their forefathers, parents, which was Noah and his wife and his family, 3 sons and 3 daughter-in-laws, were the only ones saved when there was this flood. They didn't want the earth to be destroyed in this flood again. So they want to make this big city and huddle up in one place. The Tower of Babel was actually when the worship of Satan in the form of fire, the sun, and the serpent began by Nimrod. However, Satan worship could not be done openly because of the many who still believed in the true God of Noah, that Noah worshipped. So a mystery religion, what religion? A mystery religion began at Babel, where Satan could be worshipped in secret. Are you getting the connection? Mystery religion. That's why on the forehead of the beast you have the word mystery, because there's a mystery religion, but it has a face or garb of Christianity. This is where, for the first time, mankind began to invent religion of his own making. When they're all speaking one same language, and all of them earlier believed in the God of heaven. In essence, they were Christians because they followed the God of heaven, the God of creation, through the directions and instructions of Christ, the Son of the Father. But even at this time, many of them we have found were still worshippers of the God of Noah. So they planned and decided to create a mystery religion where Satan could be worshipped in secret. And how was his worship? In what form was it done? In the form of the fire, the sun, or the sunlight, and the serpent. So whilst the building of the Tower of Babel, King Nimrod died. So they're building this great Tower of Babel, right? So eventually the king died. And his wife, whose name was Semiramis, ended up getting pregnant through an illicit relationship, before which he declared that Nimrod is gone to the sun. And when she got pregnant, she claimed that the Nimrod spirit, through the ray of the sun, came into her and got her pregnant. And thus she declared to the subjects of the kingdom that this newborn is her son from Nimrod via the sun, and she named him Tammuz. That son was called Tammuz. This boy, Tammuz, was born on December 25, the day in which the world today celebrates Christmas. This month is December. We're coming very close to that. Christmas has nothing to do with the earthly birth of Christ. It is one of the greatest myths. Even if you type in Google, you will see one of the greatest myths in the world today that are practiced by people all over the world. On 25th December, Christmas is one of the greatest myths. This was brought about by the modern day Babylon, a man-made religion, namely the Roman Catholic Church. They brought this about. It's called Christmas is Christ's Mass. Christ was not even born in December to start with. So thereafter, after Tammuz was born, all the people in Babylon worshiped the sun god in the names of Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz. The sun god was worshipped in the names of Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz. This is where the birth of the three God concept began, and after their language was confused by the God of heaven because he could disperse them. Some of them spoke only one language, the others spoke another language, this side spoke another language, and they eventually got dispersed. So the one who spoke the same language went to one direction of the planet Earth, the others went another direction, others another direction, and others other direction. This is also the beginning of the new languages. And it was brought about by heaven, by God himself. Of course, later on, a lot of other languages came out from some of these main languages that were there at that time. So God confused the language, and they were scattered abroad, and many of these people took along with them the three-in-one God concept to their new cultures. And this is how it all began in the following countries, somewhere between 2094 BC and 2000 BC, which is a little over 4,000 years from now. In Egypt, these are three-in-one or one-in-three God concept. They're called by the names of Osiris, Horus, and Isis or Ra. In Greece, and you'll find this in Greek mythology by the way, Greece, Zeus, Apollo, and Athena. In India, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And Rome, Jupiter, Mars, and Venus. So these were all created by humanity under the influence of what they learned and practiced in Babylon through Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz. And the best books of history, provable, reliable forms of history, will show you that none of these religions that you see on the screen now existed before this time. Even the Hindus' own books, own historians, date their religion not even this little before this time. Of course, there will be some who will say that they're 5,000, 6,000 years old, but that's an assumption, just like many scientists have claimed to study some fossils, and they have said this fossil in this part of the world is 20 million years old. Really? Those are all blind assumptions. But if you have to look into provable, reliable, authentic history that can be proven that it is authentic, none of these religions can claim to exist before that time. So from history, one can also establish that this pagan three-in-one God concept was adopted into the Christian church by Rome in the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. And Roman Catholic Church has openly claimed this to be what? The central doctrine of the Roman Catholic Church. Let's read the quotation straight from their own publication. The mystery. Do you see the word mystery again? It all began throughout Babel. Mystery worship, mystery religion. And Roman Catholicism is only continuing those abominable practices that brings desolation. But they are baptized with a Christian garb, a Christian front of face. The mystery of the Trinity is the central doctrine of the Catholic faith. And upon it, upon this central doctrine, upon this mysterious central doctrine, are based all the other teachings of the church. All, including Sunday Sabbath. Sunday is not the central doctrine. Sunday is the result, though it started in 321 AD, but their central doctrine, not the day of worship, the central doctrine is Trinity. And upon it are based all the teachings of the church. The doctrine of Trinity essentially teaches that the one God is in three persons, and they term it as God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. This teaching is completely foreign to the Bible, and no promulgation of any sort is made to any such claim anywhere in the Bible, unless one tries to quote some of the passages of Scripture out of context. This is purely a pagan belief and doctrine, which in simple terms is idol worship or Satan worship, invented by man under the influence of Satan himself. And some of the archaeologists found evidence of Babel when they went to dig in that Hilla, which is in the center of Baghdad. They found this. Do you see? Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz, the three-in-one, one-in-three God concept right there. That's in Egypt. And here is Babylon. This is what they found on the left side of the screen. Sun worship. Three phases of the sun: the morning sun, the midday sun, and the afternoon sun. Now you see this in Hinduism. You see this, so many images of that in Hinduism. Three. Look at this. Another three. You have fire, serpent. Can you see snake? Images of snake all over there. Like a cobra hanging there in the top. Cobra snake. And then you have the halo of the sun behind their heads. Plus fire. What is all this? All began in Babylon when they're building the Tower of Babel. a mixed religion that Nimrod began in the form of fire, the sun, and the serpent. There's another one. You can see the snake head on the top, halo, the yellow halo of the sun. It's not a coincidence. Images, pictures play a big role to project or to testify of the truth that you stand for. Here's another one. 3 again, with the big halo of the sun. How about this in the modern day Babylon? Look at the round sun, right with the Pope. What about this one? The halo of the sun. What about this one? Look at it around the head of Mary. You see the serpent? In Catholicism, the Roman Catholic Church, there it is. Can you see? Right on the ceiling, it's a serpent design. Snake, including the eyes, like a cobra snake. And the Pope is sitting there in the back on the seat. This is one of the cathedrals. Here's another symbol of snake with the halo of the sun in the Catholic system. You will see it everywhere if you go and observe carefully. And then when you go, you'll also see this. It's called the triquetra. There are symbols, and in some of the cathedrals, even in the pews, the wood is hewed down in such a way that it gives a triquetra effect. And we saw that in Babylon, equilateral triangle, where all sides are equal. We saw that in the image that we saw a little while ago, where the archaeologists have found that. So what is a triquetra? Let's have a read of that. The triquetra is a satanic symbol that has its origin in the what? In the occult. It has always been associated with pagan beliefs, satanic practices, and witchcrafts. The triquetra is composed of 3 sixes, number 6, overlaid. And we saw last week the total of 666, the number of a man, and we saw what that was. This logo is the ancient symbol for the pagan trinity. The symbol was popularized again by Satanist Aleister Crowley. Some of you must have heard that name. For the royal arch, who is Lucifer. Aleister Crowley was an open Satan worshipper of the 3rd degree of the York Order of Masonry. That's what a triquetra is. And you see in Roman Catholic churches and buildings, inside the churches, outside of the buildings, all over the place. In another form, to tell you. In fact, most of the cars, automobiles in the world, all their symbols of their brands, Toyota and many, many others, BMW, all of them have the circle and the message of triquetra in almost many, may not be all, but most of them. This is the Harper's Encyclopedia of Mystical Experience. He says symbols are important to all esoteric teachings, for they contain secret wisdom accessible only to the initiated. You look at the beginning of Olympics recently done in England a few years ago. You look at many, many pop and rock performance, you'll have all the symbolisms behind them in their body, in their chest, in their hands, on their backgrounds, because the ones who are initiated, the special initiates of the Pope of Rome, and they are the only ones who know the truth about these things. Everybody don't understand. The very heads of these secret societies. Speaking about secret societies, you have heard about in the 1100s, we had the Knight Templars. Then eventually we had the Jesuits of Rome in 1500, the mid 1500s, by the Ignatius Loyola. And then they created some other fronts like the Illuminati and the Freemasonry and Skull and Bones. Do you know that most of the nation heads, meaning presidents and prime ministers, they are all on the high initiate level of these secret societies? Almost all of them, especially the big nations. All the G8 leaders, G20 leaders, and some of the biggest businessmen of the world. And they have a club and they meet there on a quite regular basis, once a couple of years or once every year. You know, these were in the 1100s and thereafter. But the first secret society was created by papacy or the Pope of Rome in the early 680s, and that turned out to be religion later on. The first secret society was created by the Sun religion papacy in 622. This system was born, and this secret society was brought out to eliminate all Sabbath-keeping Christians who were filled in that area of Middle East. And Islam was used for that. Now, this is the hierarchy system of Islam. The majority of Muslims don't even know these things. Likewise, in Hinduism, majority of Hindus don't even know what is the true history and what they are worshipping. They're just following the trend that has come down over ages, centuries, and for some of them, a couple of millennia. What is the symbol of the religion of Islam? It's a crescent moon, right? Where do you get, where does the moon get its light from? Does it have its own light? The moon gets its light from the sun. Babylon is sun worship. Isn't that interesting? So where did Islam get its light from? Think about it. Now you see this symbol here in the Catholic Church, triquetra, right in the glasses. And you'll see many of them. What was the special day of the sun god? Sunday was already a day exalted among the heathen, being a day on which they worship the sun. Like we read earlier, sun is the day of worship, but the central doctrine is what holds everything together, including Sunday. And all Christians who subscribe to this doctrine are indirectly and perhaps unbeknownst to themselves, they are already worshipping the Roman Catholic system or the sun god. You know, many years ago, we have this one World Council of Churches, where just about every Christian religion, every Christian church is a member of, I mean, their leadership are a member of. And you know what is their condition of membership and allegiance? Let's have a look. It says, according to the World Council of Churches Constitution, agreement with the basis upon which the council is founded is a precondition for all membership. It's a precondition. Every church is a member of this organization or of this council. A later study by the Central Committee concluded that there was no need to change the basis, though it was necessary to explain its meaning and also make clear that the Trinity was implicit in it. Do you see that? This World Council of Churches, they make it very clear that the main basis is Trinity. That there's no compromise with that. You cannot be a member of the World Council Church or the system unless you endorse this openly through your church leadership. Then later on, a version of the Bible came into existence, published. What is the Bible? The New King James Version. Right on the cover, you have the triquetra. What does it tell you? You'll never find this image of the King James Version Bible, never. I haven't seen one till date. Because the New King James Version Bible is corrupted. They have omitted the original manuscript by which the King James Version was translated in English. They have omitted it over 2,000 times. Except for one or two, all versions of the Bible other than King James Version have been corrupted by the Jesuits of Rome or the Pope of Rome under his orders and command. So much so that number of Sabbath or 7-day Sabbath keeping, Saturday Sabbath keeping Christians have also been duped into it, succumbed to it, and sold their soul to this doctrine. In 2002, this book was printed by Seventh-day Adventist Church who claimed to be Sabbath keepers. 2002, the Trinity doctrine. Can you see sun at the back? the halo of the sun, and three. And interestingly, three authors as well. Oh, what a coincidence. Like I said earlier, images and pictures convey a deep message. As we close, I'd like to read two verses. When God was taking the Israelites from Egypt and they're about to enter Canaan, this is the instruction he gave them. Numbers 33, 50 to 52. And the Lord spake unto Moses in the plains of Moab by Jordan near Jericho, and said, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when ye are passed over, because once you cross the Jordan, you are into Canaan. When you are passed over Jordan into the land of Canaan, then ye shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you, and destroy all their pictures, and destroy all their molten images, and quite pluck down all their high places, pagan worship, altars, etc. They did to an extent, but they didn't do it all. And because they didn't do it completely as God instructed, you know what happened? This is the last verse. 2 Kings 17:24. Eventually, the king of Assyria, which is at that time was king of the north, brought men from Babylon and from Kutha and from Ava and from Hamath and from Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of children of Israel. And they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. And as we discussed earlier, the modern day Babylon is going to enter into Jerusalem to make it its official capital, before which the king of the north, Islam, is going to take over. Then the whole world, along with by the command of the Pope of Rome, they're going to destroy Islam in the sixth plague. But as far as our institutions are concerned, our families are concerned, our lives are concerned, the modern day Babylon, by their teachings, by their esoteric teachings and photos and images and doctrines, they have already come into our churches, come into our minds, come into our thought processes, unknowingly practicing the very tenets of their sun worship, which is a form of fire, serpent, and Satan. It's time to wake up, my friends, and be Christians that God desired, not the Christians that exist today. Let us strive to be part of that small group who will live Christ, speak Christ, and exhibit Christ-likeness exactly as the Bible says, and be part of the 144,000 who alone will see the second advent of Jesus Christ.